congratulations on your film being released this weekend. I know so many people are excited to go and see this film, so congratulations.
Oh, thanks so much. I tell you, man, it's such a nerve-wracking experience, especially as a first-timer, coming from a completely different industry into this one. And, God, you know, when you're working in an industry, you never really put yourself out there because, you know, you're working in a work environment, you've got colleagues, it's all very insular and private, you know, when you're working in a corporate world, unless you're a public company and you have to make statements. But yeah, when you're doing your own movie and you're putting it out there, everybody's going to have an opinion, everybody's going to have something to say, and you're like, but what about my feelings? So it's quite an experience. It's a thrill, though. It's quite crazy.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that journey from the corporate world into filmmaking. Of course, you've been doing writing, and how did you go from that journey, and what kind of sparked that journey to go into filmmaking?
Yeah, sure. So look, I grew. Well, where did it start? When I was a kid, I was about 6 years old. My dad used to run. We lived in a little village in Ireland. My dad used to run the local cinema from our living room, and so we used to have a few little Disney movies, and all the farmers and locals would come to our living room, and my father would have a projector, and he'd play some movies, and that to me, as a child who didn't quite understand all of this stuff, I found it fascinating that you'd get these collection of people, you know, watching a movie, and then obviously a number of years have passed. By the time I'm about 15, my father got wrangled into the film business as an animal wrangler, because I grew up with a lot of pets and animals, and you know, from timber wolves to foxes to what else we had? Plenty of other animals. We had a little monkey that my father put in.
Oh wow!
Film with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, that Irish sort of American film they did with Ron Howard. And so I always sort of grew up with an unusual creative environment, because my father was a sculptor and an artist. And so, I came onto a film set when I was about 15 years old for the first time. And I thought it was just the most incredible experience. I mean, there's one thing watching a movie, or even some of the behind the scenes, which I think is always quite fascinating when you're seeing how they do Star Wars or other, you know, big budget films or even small budget films, just how things are done and how they look in front of camera versus behind camera. And so, yeah, look, my interest in that grew, but Ireland, I guess, similar to Australia, has a very limited scope around what they can make. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to see a movie of a bunch of Irish people saving the world, flying onto a meteor and drilling holes and saving the world like Bruce Willis did. And so, for me, I sort of struggled with the kind of material that I like to write, the stuff that I'm interested in seeing, and you know, genre films would be that. You know, I've got a vast interest in many stuff, from drama, beautiful art, work, movies, but also, you know, big genre, you know, juicy genre films, and so I knew there was no way that this was going to happen with me living in Ireland, and so, you know, I got into finance so I could write, excuse me, so that I could work on books, but also on screenplays and ideas and concepts, but also just have a day job. That obviously took a lot longer. You know, you get a few rejections of people reading your material, and you know, you kind of just strive on. And I was quite good at finance and good at numbers, and I just, you know, kept moving up the ranks, and eventually became a chief financial officer for a lot of companies, and especially the last company, which I helped grow internationally around the world, who provide the front end technology and user experience for basically any of us to be able to watch movies and TV shows and whatever on any device at any moment in time. And then we sold the company in 2017, so that really opened, and I was a large shareholder in that company as well, so that really opened the door for me to be able to go, I have a window here now to follow my dream, follow something that I've always wanted to do, And that's exactly what I did. I decided to just go for it. Just even if this is my only film I ever make in my life, I followed the dream. I had to give it a go, and that's what we're looking at today in the cinemas. Is that sort of labor of love and dream.
Definitely, yeah. So where did that idea for Ascendant first come from? Is that an idea that had been with you a long time?
Yeah, look, it's. I was at a business meeting in Sydney back in, what was it, 2000, just before my daughter Aria was born, who was the name I gave to the character in the film. So that would have been in 2010, just before she was born in 2011. Sorry, 2009. And so, I just walked out of a meeting and I was leaving, and there was this maintenance guy working on the elevator system using a device. iPads weren't around then, so it was a tablet, similar tablet type devices. That's what an iPad would look like. And he literally was controlling the elevator up and down at his own speed. I mean, he could move it up much more quickly, and he could move it quite slowly. And I'm terrified of heights, and I just looked at that. Every time I get into an elevator, it's always, oh God, is this going to be one of those days where it just gets, it stops?
I'm the same.
Breaks down,
Yeah.
And so to see a guy have that much power really fascinated me. So then that's where it kicked off, and then I started working on some ideas around that. What kind of genre do I want here? I'm not really a horror. I've loved many horror films, as a teenager, but then, at my age, you sort of grow out of it. You're like, I don't want to be scared anymore. I don't want something to jump out at me and make me go, oh, my kids love it. They all laugh and think it's amazing, but I'm like, oh, God, I don't want to see this anymore. But it still drew, I guess it's my inner fear of heights and all of that really made me want to look at where can I go with this? Where can I create something that I thought was a really cool idea that I really think should be made, but then evolve it into a much bigger story or a much, something that more interests me, which would be the science fiction element of it, or the superhero side, which is very difficult to do today. Create a new superhero kind of heroine when the market is owned by DC and Marvel and the like. So I just wanted to make it more than just a girl trapped in an elevator who's being tormented by the bad guys. So I just really wanted to expand on that. Then the other side of it was really the emotion. If you make a movie for this length of time, you've got to have other pieces of information throughout the story. So you do have to pay attention when watching this. You really need to sort of listen and engage. And I hope I've done a really good job in doing that. In that if you start to get confused, you've missed one or two pieces of information. So it is a bit of that, which I personally prefer myself as an audience member. I mean, I love Christopher Nolan's kind of stuff. You sit there and come out of that movie going, God, there's so much information.
Yeah.
Did I understand it all? So it was the same. It was the same for me. With this was I wanted to put some nuggets of information because I don't like spoon-fed movies myself. I don't like being the stuff being rammed down my throat. Where it interferes with the creativity, it interferes with the story. That's what I do.
Yeah. Now, this is a weird theory that I've been throwing around in my head for quite a while now, but do you think the pandemic's actually been good for Australian cinema? Because why I say that is I have always been a fan of Australian cinema. I have loved it ever since I started to watch films, but a lot of my friends have always been that kind of person that's like, oh, I want to go see this movie. Oh, it's Australian. No, I don't want to go see it. But I've noticed so many people have had to go and watch Australian films now that the cinemas are back open after the pandemic because there are so many out there. They've watched them and liked them and realised that they've been wrong for all these years. So do you think the pandemic has actually been good for Australian films? Because like I said, I know so many people who are so excited about Ascendant coming out this weekend who would normally have been in that realm of I won't go and see it because it's Australian.
that's a really. I'm glad you know. I think we all feel that in the industry here in Australia. Look, you know, when international films come over into the cinemaverse over here, it comes with a huge amount of marketing. So everybody over here are so used to watching American content. They really are. I mean, they watch. You know, you've got everything on Foxtel, you've got everything on Stan, you've got everything on Netflix, and the majority of it is American content. The more independent networks like Antaine and those, you know, have had very successful, you know, Australian television dramas that have, you know, been very successful internationally. So I think the quality has improved greatly. I know when I first came here, I remember pitching a science fiction project about a really high-tech car. You know, it's kind of like Knight Rider, except it's a military thing that can really do some stuff, and it's kind of a cross between Knight Rider and Transformers kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was an Australian film. Like, it was the lead character was similar to like what Chris Hemsworth was in that latest film that he did for Netflix, where he plays an Aussie soldier and he's overseas trying to save this young boy or something. And so I really loved the landscape here in the country, and I was like, this is an international country. This is a big city. If the Americans do it, if the British can do it, if the French can do it, why can't there be huge different sort of genre films on a wide scale? So what I learned from that was, well, you know, similar, I guess, to Ireland is, you know, no one's going to be, and this is talking to investors and talking to film people internationally and sales agents, no one's going to find it credible for an Australian person to save the world. It's the same thing that I was saying about, you know, an Irish person, which is, you know, you get it from a sales perspective.
Yeah.
And that, you know, when it comes down to investors, that's something that needs to be respected, because if they're going to put the money in, especially in Screen Australia, you know, they're putting investment into Australian content, which is funded by the Australian taxpayer. But the quality in Australia, I love Australian films. I mean, The Castle is one of my favorite all-time Australian films. It is just so beautiful in every single way. But the quality and the genres have started to change, and I think that's also to do with the fact that streamers have arrived into the country. So you've got your Netflix, you've got Disney, and I think it's going to get better. So back to your thing about the pandemic, absolutely. I think, you know, all the spend that would normally come over here for, you know, pumping out the big blockbusters, that's all money, right? Because the cinemas have, you know, very expensive real estate that they need to pack out in order to be able to, you know, fund all the employees, and talking about the finance guy now, but all the employees, the payrolls, the rent, you know, all of this kind of stuff that they have to pay for. And so it's put an end to that spend in marketing. So what's happened next is this vacuum of no money being spent, but really strong Australian content has risen out of this. And people have been sick of watching. I think that, you know, like myself, you get tired of watching television and what's on it, like, you know, the quality of stuff that's on it. And I think Australians did go out and they went, oh my God, this stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
What's happened here? And the thing is, it's not. I, you know, I'm Irish, but my wife is, you know, Australian. My kids are all Australian. I've lived here a long time. I consider myself an adopted Australian, and I hope you all see the same for me.
Yeah.
But I've drawn a lot of inspiration from this country, and I just think when you have like the cinema, all the cinemas in the country, you know, they've got to make money. And when you've got the big spenders being America coming over here, spending all that money on the marketing and advertising and their big, you know, world-building kind of movies, it's really difficult for independent film to compete. So there's been a lot of really good Australian films being made, but they just can't get into the cinema. They can't get into that marketing space so that Australians know they even exist. And so this pandemic has created a very quiet space where everybody has heard about The Dry. And let's face it, right, The Dry is a great piece of work, great book, but it's had an enormous window for Australians to see it that would never have been there if the American films if this pandemic never happened. And it's nothing against the quality of it. It's just, it's had about a 4-month window in cinemas. I mean, even the biggest blockbuster movies don't get 4-month windows. I mean, they're in and they're out in about a month, right?
Yep.
So, give or take that. So I really think we all need Australians to back Australian movies and all independent movies, because they mostly are all independent films. I think the quality is in the country, from the writers, the directors, the cinematographers, the visual effects companies, the actors. The talent is there. It's just there's I think, well, like what you said, there's like a sort of a stigma, this thing about, it's Australian, therefore it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
And I really hope that pandemic window, let's call it, that silence around the marketing and the rise of Australian content will just grow now and give Australians a much greater view of what can be achieved.
Definitely, and I think that has happened as well, which I am so glad about. I guess I know we are running out of time, so to wrap up, what would you like to say to our listeners out there who are thinking about going out and seeing Ascendant this weekend?
Yeah, look, I think what we've achieved here is an international film. So it's not something that's just limited to it being Australian. It's an Australian-made film, but it's an international film. It's got an incredible visual effects. It's a really tough story, but it's an emotional story about our heroine and the choices that she's had to make as a child to where she is today. So I want the same support that everybody wants when they're getting a movie out there for the first time. But all I can say is I just hope they can go and enjoy it and kick back, eat the popcorn, have their chopped ups, and be entertained.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us today. It has been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully,
thank you.
Hopefully I get to chat to you with film number 2 as well.
Oh yeah, I hope so, David. Thanks a lot.
Definitely. I'll let you go. Have fun on the Gold Coast. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.